All right, well, we'll get underway then. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 2022 Annual General Meeting of 4-H Alberta. My name is Andy Pittman, and I'm Chair of the 4-H Alberta Board of Directors. It's my pleasure to call this meeting to order at 1:02 p.m. This afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. To begin our meeting, please rise and join our Youth Director, Evan Jameson, who will lead us in reciting the 4-H Pledge.
I pledge.
My head to clear thinking, my heart to greater loyalty, my hands to larger service, my health to better living, for my club, my community, my country, and my world.
Great, thanks, Evan. So we'll note that the materials for this meeting were sent out to the voting members of 4-H Alberta electronically through a secure platform as read-only documents. A number of these materials, after being accepted and approved, will appear on the 4-H Alberta website. Please note that motions will appear on your screen throughout the meeting. We will be providing you instructions on how to vote when we get to the first motion in the meeting. Some other housekeeping before we begin. Joining us today is Andrew Baronski from Cobblestone Collective to technically support and keep our meeting going smoothly. We ask that you also please change your name to name and region to help us communicate with one another in the meeting. Also, if you could please mute yourself unless speaking as well, that would be very helpful. Thanks very much. We understand the challenges that the internet can bring, but if at all possible, please leave your video running unless you are experiencing bandwidth issues. We're also very pleased to have members of 4-H community join us today for the viewing of this AGM, so we welcome you as well. So just a note of clarification, 4-H Alberta Bylaw Article 2.1 states that general membership in the corporation shall be available to persons interested in furthering the corporation's purposes. Such members shall include youth participants, volunteers, alumnus, parents, and leaders. General members shall not be entitled to vote at any meetings of the members of the corporation. Voting members shall be, number one, existing directors of the corporation, and number two, those members which are elected by each of the area regional assemblies to serve and represent their area regional assemblies as their executive committee, and which shall comprise no more than 4, and whose names and contact information has been duly provided and recorded in the voting membership register of the corporation. So this should help provide some clarity regarding who are the voting members in 4-H Alberta. There are a number of important items on our agenda today, but before we proceed, please let me first introduce you to our 4-H Alberta Board of Directors, who worked very hard for our members and community over this past year. A few of our board are joining us virtually today as well. So I'll just introduce, and you could give a wave as I call out your name if you can. So Christine Swamanen, Diversity Director, Vice Chair and Chair of the People and Resources Committee. Saida Karam, Diversity Director, Treasurer and Chair of the Audit and Finance Committee. Kathy Price, Diversity Director and Board Secretary, who is unfortunately unable to join us today. Evan Jameson, Youth Director and Chair of the Programs and Growth Committee. Nora Polovich, Area Director and Chair of the Governance and Nominating Committee. Andrea Hansen, Area Director for Calgary South and Chair of the Community Engagement Committee. Scott Bodie, Diversity Director. Janice Wersta, Area Director for Northeast. Kathleen Linder, Area Director for Northwest. Leanne Alberg, past Chair and ex officio. And I also want to mention the recently retired Tim Church as well, who is Area Director for East and West Central. Also, we have Jake Katowicz, ex officio, representing the Government of Alberta, and Kurt Kinnear, CEO of 4-H Alberta. Thank you very much. So the roll call of voting member attendees has been checked. Can we confirm we have quorum?
Yes.
We confirm we have quorum, and we have attained it for this meeting and confirmation of that. So we'll proceed. So today I'll provide a chairman's report regarding the past year's board activities. You'll hear from Kurt Kinnear, our CEO, who will provide details around operational accomplishments over the past year. Our treasurer, Saida Karam, will provide an introductory report. Our CFO, Candice McKay, will provide audit details and will accept the 2021 financials. Our Governance and Nominations Chair, Nora Polovich, will provide an update on some amendments on the bylaws for 4-H Alberta for approval. Nora will also present the slate of nominees for the vacancies on the 4-H Alberta board for approval. and we'll look forward to what's ahead in 2022. It's the continuation of exciting times for the organization. When we sent out the registration with the AGM documents back in May, we requested registrants to provide any questions they may have on the information they received to ensure that there was ample time to provide those questions and the accompanying answers. We did receive a few questions from the voting members. We hope to have time to answer those questions during an allotted time just before the conclusion of the AGM. But if we run short of time, we will also have a chance for the board to answer these and other questions in a Q&A session with voting members after the adjournment of the business meeting, and that session will run from 2 to 2:30 at the adjournment of the AGM. So now on to the agenda. We'll go on to the approval of our agenda. So could I please call on Christine Sawamanan for a motion to approve and adopt the agenda?
I move to approve and adopt the 2022 Alberta AGM agenda as presented.
Can I ask someone to second that motion? Saida Karam will second that motion. So now what we'll be doing is we'll be using our voting system for the first time of the required motions in the meeting. So now we're going to work through that. And so we're going to use the electronic process to vote on this motion. We're going to go through a quick tutorial because then this is what you'll do for all the votes. All right, so now step 1, you'll go to your inbox and there will be an email notification from eVote. I don't know if we have an illustration on the screen for that, Simone. So if you go to your inbox and get that notification, there's an illustration. It should be with the PowerPoint. Open the email and it will introduce you to the 4H Alberta e-voting link. Here we go. That's what we're looking for. Okay, so you open that link email and it introduces you to the e-voting link. The body of the email will contain a button link labeled "Click here to vote." Click the link to go to the ballot. Okay, so that's step 2. Step 3, check the box beside "in favor" or "approve," depending on the ballot, or "opposed" or "not approved," depending on the ballot. You may also abstain from voting by not checking either box and just click the button labeled "continue." Once selected, you will have the option to deselect to change your vote, or click the button labeled "reset" to reset the ballot and start over. When you are ready, select and click "continue," and you will be directed to the next step to confirm your vote or change your selection. The 2 button options are confirm and change selection. If you are ready to confirm your vote, click confirm. Once you confirm your vote, you will see a notification displaying success and a button labeled close to close the e-voting screen. Please use that system now to vote on the motion to approve the agenda. So if you can proceed to do that.
You don't have an email yet?
I didn't get the email yet. I
Just try checking spam folders and refreshing, because it might take a couple seconds to arrive.
So is the system working for most folks?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I have confirmation from people who knew it's working.
Okay.
So we'll get an email for each motion.
Yeah, we will get a separate email.
Yes.
Okay, so we're just gonna do a quick view of a technical issue here, folks, so we'll just hang on for a second. Hopefully it's working for everyone. We did a few run-throughs here this past week and it worked fairly well, so. Was it? Okay,
Yep,
good
it
to
was
hear.
sent.
We'll just pause for 1 minute here and then, or do we need to?
I believe I remember this was the vote with the late proxy.
Right,
Yes, so
Right,
I just need
okay.
to be in favor for,
there are 3, right?
there's 3 that you will get emails for. This one will
Right,
just need to
okay,
be in
gotcha,
person in
okay,
favor.
perfect. Yeah, so you'll get that email for this, okay, perfect.
For-
Marion.
Okay, so if we've got all the voting done, so then voting is closed.
Do you have a
For this one?
sheet at telephone?
Push refresh, man. Got 5.
So we can just use this in.
Maybe in your spam. I tried that once and I checked the spam, it's not there.
Yeah.
Internet.
We just got a few more technical issues then. Okay.
Just pause. Okay.
Sorry, folks, we'll just be a minute here. We'll hopefully get it.
So you see the other side. I'll just be on here to answer questions. You are talking to me. Questions?
I don't.
Check your junk.
No,
Maybe.
there is a different. There's a slight adjustment with that. Yeah. 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 So are we just waiting for?
Could we perhaps continue with a yay or nay vote and then we'll have it figured out? by
Okay,
next
so are we just? How many are unable to vote?
One additional on one.
Okay, so we have. So we have how many unable to vote? 2 right now. 1 here and 1.
Yes, so there's 2 in person that will be
Okay.
voting orally and then 1 online.
Okay. Okay, so 2 in person, yay or nay? Yay, okay, online? Okay, so we'll continue with those 3 and the next vote's the same way. Unless it happens to work. When you try it the next time.
Oh, technology.
Exactly. Approved? Okay, so that motion is carried, so thank you. So on to the next item on the agenda. We'll keep it moving here, and that is the AGM minutes of May 29th, 2021. Are there any corrections to the minutes of last year? Nothing from online? Okay, hearing none, can I please ask Nora Palovich to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I move that the 2021 4-H Alberta AGM minutes be approved as written.
Can I ask Kevin Jameson to second? A second. Okay. All right, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor, please vote now in the system. Okay.
Check yours and see. I have, yeah, okay. I just got it, did you get it? Oh, no,
She won't have it for that yet.
Yeah. This is an old one, I haven't got it yet.
And Marion, so then you'll vote favor or opposed? There, okay. And online is the,
It will just take a minute because of.
okay, no problem. That's the one thing over the last few years that everybody has gotten some level of used to is technical glitches, because all meetings have been on a Zoom screen. So we appreciate everyone's patience. So thank you. Okay, so it's carried.
So do you want me to click here?
Oh, we're just voting now. Okay, gotcha.
Vote now that I got it, if I confirmed it in person?
If this might be the second.
This is the second one.
Okay, you do together.
Okay.
No. Okay, so please vote now.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, so you can watch while I do it, so if it comes up, you know.
You will get it for the third one.
Or just to know this is there.
Right. Yeah, that's okay.
Everyone received the vote?
Yeah, we received it, yeah.
Great.
Okay, vote is closed. Okay, motion is carried. All right, on to the next item on the agenda, which is the Chair Annual Report. The first ever 4-H Alberta Board of Directors was elected to existence at the Annual General Meeting of 4-H Alberta on May 29th, 2021. The new board took over from the interim board, who had been overseeing 4-H Alberta since March of 2020. It is important to note the substantial work that was done by the interim board on a great number of details, allowing the new board to settle in its role. And this small interim group is once again thanked for their significant volunteer contributions to the advancement of the new 4-H Alberta. The new board of 11 directors was elected at the 2021 AGM, with directors representing the 5 areas and 5 diversity directors elected for the skill sets they brought to the board. There was also 1 youth director elected to complete the board, a significant addition, ensuring that a youth voice will always sit at the board of directors table, providing invaluable insight from a member's perspective. There was a great deal of work to continue from the interim board's committees. In addition to the executive committee, the 5 committees that were continued were Audit and Finance, Governance and Nominating, Scholarship, Programs and Growth, and People and Resources. In addition, another committee was created which consisted of all the area directors, becoming known as the Community Engagement Committee. This committee was established to ensure consistent communication with the 5 areas and their regional councils. In September, the board created the first strategic plan for the new 4-H Alberta. This allowed the mapping out of a vision, mission, values, and principles, and strategic priorities, including growth, business excellence, innovative programming, and legacy. This strategic plan should provide the roadmap for stability and growth in the years ahead and will be adapted as priorities evolve. Last summer, the Governance Committee engaged the regions in a discussion about the potential for alignment of regional bylaws. Initial timetables were adjusted as discussions continued, and it was determined in January, in respect of everyone's valuable time, that regions could take the perspective gained from these discussions into consideration in their normal timetables when reviewing their bylaws. However, much constructive feedback was gained through the process, and the time spent on these discussions was greatly appreciated. 4-H Alberta Board put significant work into a governance framework which has been adopted to running a board that functions in a true governance system and style. This system is a system that functions quite differently from the more traditionally operational governance style that is seen at other levels of 4-H within the province. So the board has worked hard to practice and sustain this form of governance. We have enlisted the assistance of numerous professionals for governance training and advice. Other tools include a board work plan and a self-assessment to ensure we identify potential gaps and areas for improvement. We are in regular communication with 4-H Canada regarding policies and practices being discussed at the national level and across the country. We also welcome new Alberta 4-H Foundation trustees, and much thanks go to the interim trustees for their dedication to the oversight of 4-H Alberta's assets. We are very pleased to continue our strong association with our main sponsor and partner, the Government of Alberta. We also want to acknowledge the wonderful support of so many incredible sponsors who provide funding for 4-H Alberta initiatives. It is greatly appreciated. As a proud 105-year-old organization, the new structure has provided some challenges and numerous successes. We strive to always be and do better every day, and we look forward to developing and continuing the strong connections with our great 4-H community. That concludes the chairman's report. So next on the agenda is the CEO annual report. So we'll turn it over now to our CEO, Kurt Kinnear, for his annual report. Kurt?
Thank you very much, Andy. So 4-H Alberta's 2021 highlights. Across Canada, 4-H Alberta is currently an outlier in our ability to currently retain members, leaders and volunteers, and retain our funders. And it's thanks to the great work of our team and as well as the excellent support we've had from our board. So currently we have about 5,400 members, including 740 cleavers. And this is an average from the last 2 club years because they kind of cross over there. And then we have 285 clubs. Around 2,400 volunteers, and every year we've seen last year we saw a significant increase in our ability to get our volunteers to complete their screening and their training. So that's been continuing to improve. And our retention rate is at 93%. Just to add a little perspective, the retention rate across Canada ranges from 50% to 80%, I think, is the highest we've seen. So we're quite a ways out of beyond that. And we're definitely the outlier across the country. And then our funding, thanks to the work of Bianca and her team, and we've met most of our stakeholders, is sitting at 98%, which is excellent. And then we've also launched a lot of programs, virtual and in person during this period. And we're going to continue to grow those programs. So observations, I thought, since we're kind of a newer organization, this is our first go around through a year, and we still haven't even had a full year without COVID. We were looking at the 4-H Alberta strategic priorities, which are growth, business excellence, innovative programming, and legacy. And based on those combined goals, growth being very important to the future of 4-H, which has been on a slow decline for, I think, a decade and a half. And that's the job I've been brought in to do. I looked at what are the core functions that we're missing, and how are we going to be able to support a future growth. And if you're to look at it as a house, where we're at is actually building the foundation of that house. It's currently needs some work. So that involves systems, conflict resolution, and transparent communications. So that is the 3 objectives that operationally we're focused on for 4-H Alberta. And around systems, you've got a bunch of categories: club supplies, screening, timelines, online registration, and accreditation requirements which were released by 4-H Canada recently, and we've got to maintain that bar. The big one is, if you were to look at systems, it's really how do we serve our volunteer leaders so that they can focus on our membership and stop trying to figure out all this other stuff. So you're going to see a lot of resources coming out that way to try and ease systems. I want to be real clear. We're not trying to tell people this is what you have to do. We're saying if there's an issue, this will be our roadmap to solve it, which is really important. We want to keep the flexibility in our community. Conflict resolution, I would actually say, is the first and foremost concern that I've seen in the first year and a half. If 4-H Alberta won't find a way to stand behind our volunteers and help serve our people in our community that are focused on our membership, if we can't find a way to resolve that, we're not going to be able to continue to find the excellent volunteers we have in this organization. So we want to find a system that will help us to deal with conflict quickly, fairly, and then be able to move forward as an organization. And then transparency and communication, we've added our town halls We do those every two months. There's always a question and answer period, and we answer every single question that's been given to us every time. So if you have anything, you can, aside from reaching out to our team, you can bring it forward in the town hall. And then we're also meeting with our stakeholders. I would say I was late to this, but we met our regional chairs and regions. Andy and I did last month, and I think we need to do that more. But the reason I would say my delay is I felt like I still didn't know enough to be able to answer all the questions, and that's my fault. I should have met sooner. So we're going to continue doing that. I think the recommendation from the region was quarterly. And then we're also going to continue to support our club leaders as best we can. So those are the foundational pieces. And if we can't figure those out, we can't grow this organization. We can't turn the curve of regular years of annual decline. These are the things that I think are the priority to attain the strategic objectives the board's given our operations team. And that is my update, Andy.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Kurt. Much appreciated. Great information. All right, so we'll continue on with the agenda then today. And the next item on the agenda is the annual financial treasurer's report. I'll now turn proceedings over to Saida Karam, Audit and Finance Chair, and our treasurer. Please join me in welcoming Saida along with Candace McKay, our contracted CFO, to present a report on finances.
Thank you, Andy. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to provide an update as chair of the H Alberta Audit and Finance Committee on behalf of the H Alberta Board of Directors. We are pleased to provide you with an overview of the complete 2021 audit results as prepared by the auditor. Our auditor was Myers Norris Penn. Voting members received a complete package of audit financials in their meeting package. Before we dive into the reporting of finances for H Alberta, I would like to first extend my thank you to the Audit and Finance Committee members, Andy Pittman, Jameson, and Nora Polovich, for their due diligence in support of the organization's financial practices. It's been a pleasure working with you as we sought together to ensure best practices are in place, to ensure dollars are invested into initiatives that provide direct value, and to ensure that we're in compliance with all the financial policies. I also would like to thank you, our CEO, Kurt Kingerer, and our CFO, Candace McKay. They are the real drivers maintaining the organization's high standards and delivering results with accountability, transparency, and integrity. H Alberta has promised to our grassroots, and the committee endorsed best practices in transparency and diligence with our funds in all aspects of the organization. This level of transparency is always challenging to achieve, since it can sometimes cause misinformation or misinterpretation of information. Keeping that in mind, transparency, which is our ultimate goal, we have prepared a summary presentation for today that we will hope provide transparency and clarity on the status of the organization's status. Some of the committee goals for the year that we have implemented are to understand and provide oversight of accounting practices and the financial reporting process, oversee the internal audit function, and to ensure the quality and integrity of internal accounting controls and processes, select and provide oversight of the external auditor and ensure the auditor's independence, regularly meet as a committee and review the financial statements, and then provide that review and report the financial statements to the board, oversee all aspects of risk management controls and ensure continuity of operations, protection of assets, and adequacy of insurance coverage. And finally, ensure that the CEO and CFO were in compliance with all statutory filings. The ultimate goal of the committee as we work together the last year is to continue to provide the best possible value that meets the needs and expectations of our stakeholders, members, and the operations. As approved at the AGM of May 29, 2021, MNP was engaged to prepare an external audit of H Alberta. The auditor worked very closely with Candace McKay, our CFO, and all requirements were met. A materiality discussion was held at the Audit and Finance Committee. The committee decided that MNP should set the materiality for this audit. This was agreed upon and approved by the Board of Directors, and the materiality rate was determined as $100,000 by MNP. We have received the audit findings report, which the committee reviewed, and those recommendations were made to the board, which have been approved by the board at the May 9, 2022 board meeting. At this time, I return the reporting of the finances over to Candace McKay, our contract CFO from Candace. Thank you, Candace.
Thanks, Aida. So my name is Candace McKay. Anybody that was here last year, welcome back and good to see you all again. I am a CPA CA. I'm the president of our CFO services division at Baker Tilly Catalyst, which used to just be Catalyst. We had a name change in September of this year. We started working with 4-H Alberta in August of 2020. So now we're nearly 2 years in. And we are responsible, my team and myself are responsible for the day-to-day accounting for 4-H Alberta, all of the board reporting, and the audit coordination. So the first part of the audited financial statements is the auditor's report. This qualified opinion is the same as it was last year, and this is very common in not-for-profit organizations. Our firm uses the same qualified opinion. M&P uses the same qualified opinion for the NPOs that they work on. It just states that the financial statements are reported fairly in all material respects, but there are certain items that they cannot fully audit, which leads to the qualified opinion. So given that this was the only qualification, there's no concerns from our team on the auditor's report or findings. So high-level financial statement review, we'll start with the current assets. The few lines there are straight from the financial statements if you want to follow along. So the unrestricted cash, which is the first line, that consists of our general operating account, sponsorship account, and then a few other smaller accounts that have a specific purpose, but they're not necessarily internally restricted. So an example of that would be the alumni account. Those smaller accounts are very, very minor in the grand scheme of that balance of 2.2 million. That is mostly general and sponsorship account. The accounts receivable consisted at the year end mostly of sponsorship and scholarship revenue, and all of that has been collected subsequent to the year end. So it was fully collectible. It now is in the bank account. The prepaid expenses is mostly prepaid insurance. So we pay our insurance in a lump sum just about this time every year. And then we recognize that prepaid insurance as a monthly expense as the year goes on. So that leads to about 6 months of insurance that's accrued at the end of the year. That is for January to June of 2022, and those will be expensed properly during those months. And the inventory is fairly self-explanatory. That is the inventory, the store inventory that was taken over from 4-H Council in the current year. So that's why you see that there's no prior year balance for that amount. Moving to the long-term assets, only 2 items there. One is our capital assets. The listing of those capital assets between land, building, equipment, etc., is listed in note 7 of the financial statements, as well as their net book values. During the year, there were some purchases, about $60,000. The major purchases in that group were TPs for the 4-H Center, a walk-in cooler, and then there was some office equipment and computers also purchased to make up that balance. The restricted cash, so we had our unrestricted cash, which was our general and sponsorship in the current assets. In the long-term assets, we have our restricted cash, which includes any bank account that is internally restricted because there is a direct, I guess, initiative with those accounts. So that is our program account, scholarship, gaming casino, the Hanson Nest, Norma Jean Gray scholarships, the Healy Estate, and the Radiff Legacy. Moving to the current liabilities, the bank indebtedness there that you see is the balance on the corporate credit cards at December 31st, 2021. Your accounts payable, and you'll notice there is quite an increase from last year. That accounts payable includes the 2020 and the 2021 Radiff payments, which makes up about $447,000 of that balance. our trade payables, which was about 77,000, and then our audit accrual, which was 42,000. The next line is our deferred revenue, and that can consist of program revenue, membership revenue, or grant revenue. And we put it in deferred in cases where those funds are collected in advance, but they're actually slated for the 2022 year. So for example, all of our membership fees that are paid before the end of 2021 that are actually for the 2022 year, those go into deferred revenue until that next year when we recognize them. That detail and that split is noted in the financial statement notes, note 9. And then we have a small amount in deposits, and those are funds collected in advance for 4-H center rentals. So for events or for outside parties that place a deposit to hold their spot for 2022. If we move to the statement of operations, also known as the profit and loss, you'll see in the top part there, the revenue across the board. All major revenue areas have an increase for 2021. Not necessarily surprising given what 2020 looked like with COVID and, really not a lot going on. That top line there, you'll see the grant of just over $1 million. Included in that is the Government of Alberta grant of $1 million. The rest are fairly self-explanatory and very similar, like I said, to last year's categorization. I can answer, Colleen, I can answer that question right now, actually. Simone or whoever's driving the bus, can you just go up one slide?
Yes.
I normally wouldn't answer questions, but since it's just right there. So the question is on the revenue side, the prior year amount, $750,000. That is the government grant portion for 2020. We'll get to this a little bit later, but historically, 4-H Alberta has recognized that grant as soon as it's received. However, that period that the grant covers actually straddles the year end for 2020 and 2021, and then again 2021 and 2022. We did make a change in accounting policy to put that into deferred revenue and then recognize an amount each month. And so the amount of the 2020 grant that was recognized, of the $1 million, $750,000 was recognized, and that's that line that you see. Go ahead.
You are skipping out a little bit on us, Candace, and it's
Okay.
It's on our end, I believe, that we're skipping out a bit, but
okay. Is everybody online okay? Thumbs up. Okay. So on the expense side, the largest expense category obviously is the salaries. There is a fair jump in salaries from 2020 to 2021. Now, keep in mind in 2020, as of June 1 was when 4-H Alberta actually took over all of those salaries. So it wasn't a full year of operational salaries in 2020, where 2021, it has been a full year of operational salaries. The expenses have increased year over year from 2020 to 2021, which is expected. All of our revenue increased. You would expect to see something similar with the expenses. They've increased for 2021, but not as much as the revenue had. And overall, compared to the operating budget, the operating expenses were $122,000 under budget for 2021. So good cost control and budgeting there. Below the regular operating items, there are a couple items that we call other. One is the gain on fair market value of the investment. So that is the difference during the year between our book value of our investments and the fair market value. We also have a gain on disposable market securities. That is the difference between when a security is sold in the portfolio compared to its book value. And then the third item is the wage subsidy revenue, which was received both in 2020 and 2021. So we have an excess of revenue over expenses, that top line for operations, we'll call it, of about $280,000. Once we factor in those other items, we do have excessive revenue over expenses about 1.44. It's important to keep in mind that that change in fair market value is just a snapshot in time. It's not actually cash that we've received or that's in the bank account. It literally is an accounting adjustment to bring those investments up to fair market value. As far as the changes in net assets and cash flow, there's been an increase in net assets of about $1.4 million in 2020. The statement on the financial statement breaks out your unrestricted, your capital, and your restricted funds. As far as the cash flows of the operations, there's $1.9 million that was brought in from operating activities of 4-H Alberta, and then about $174,000 net coming in from investing activities. If we move to the notes of the financial statement, just a very brief summary of how they're laid out. Notes 1 and 2 describe the organization and all of their accounting policies that have been used during the year. In note 3, that describes the 2 changes that we made to the 2020 statements, one of which was the one that we just spoke about, which was the Government of Alberta grant. In 2020, in the 2021 audit, it was discovered that there were some unspent casino funds. Those were then moved back to deferred revenue. That was $68,000. The organization and my team did a lot of work with AGLC to make sure that we were bang on for our casino funds. And then the second change is in 2021, the organization chose to recognize that Government of Alberta grant uniformly over the year, so month by month, instead of just a lump sum when that grant was received. So this resulted in a correction to the 2020 statements to move those 3 months that were relating to 2021 of that grant into deferred revenue at the end of 2020. So that was $250,000. Notes 4 through 9 provide some additional details on the balance sheet items. So that's where you're going to find your information on investments, information on your capital assets, information on your deferred revenue. And then notes 10 through 13 basically provide information of any other events that happened during the year that aren't necessarily linked to an item on the financial statements, any conditions that were present at the year-end date, and any conditions that occurred subsequent to year-end. Just a quick summary on the ATB investment reports. ATB Wealth manages the investment portfolio. Monthly reports are then sent to 4-H Alberta with all of the transactions and an updated fair market value. So at December 31, 2021, the book value of the investment portfolio was $7 million, and the fair market value of those same investments was 8.76, which you can tie out right to the balance sheet.
Questions for Candace?
I think there is one more here from Colleen about a note on the 10-year commitment. That's not necessarily a disclosure that's required. Usually those commitments are if the organization has to pay, not necessarily if they have revenue coming in. So it was not determined as a required disclosure by MNP.
I'm looking at the amount of the, sorry, Colleen Whittle here.
Yep.
I'm looking at the amount of the grant revenue. It's about 1/3 of the revenue that's coming in. And I'm looking at like salaries, and the fact that there was substantial Canadian wage subsidies. After this 10-year, I guess, and maybe this is more of a question for the board, after this 10-year commitment, is there concern that 4-H Alberta will be able to continue? And I guess what are the plans to subsidize or to compensate for that loss in revenue from the government?
Okay, so you were cutting out a bit. So the question was, what's the plan in 2030 as far as funding for the 4-H Alberta? If with the say the possibility that wouldn't continue. Certainly that's something that we've touched upon at Audit and Finance, but we haven't got into it in great depth at this stage, seeing as how we're just in the second year of that. But certainly that will be starting to enter into the conversation as we move forward. I think that's a fair question to bring up, and I think that we'll start strategizing for those types of things. It's always good to have long-term planning, and we're certainly going to be discussing that certainly in this year ahead to sort of start, getting some notions of that. So I think that's fair.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Don't worry about that.
In regards to salaries, were there more positions in 2021 compared to 2020, or was it just the fact that I think you noted, Candace, that 4-H Alberta took over paying the salaries in, I think, June of 2020?
Yeah, it was a little bit of both. Kurt, I don't know if you have it in front of you as the salary mix, but there were some positions that were added.
Yeah, the original budgeted plan, we're actually under the salaries budget with the original plan when 4-H Alberta was created. We did remove some positions, but we've also added some different ones to try and keep it level.
The wage subsidy, that was pretty significant and compared to your overall salaries. Will that affect you functioning this year going forward?
Candace could answer wage subsidy, but operationally, we are trying to be able to serve our community as best we can, as lean as we can, based on the grant in 10 years or 8 years now. The potential of that being reduced or changed, but also we are, if you notice last year, we actually had a positive year, but the plan, we didn't change how we were hiring anybody based on the wage subsidy. So we kept it at a level that would be able to be sustained into the next year.
Okay. Can you explain a little bit the RADF Legacy Fund, how that works?
That's a loaded question. So there's a member on our foundation that sits on the RADF funding group, and it's a partnership. That's the U of A one, right? Yes. It's a partnership with the University of Alberta, who I met 2 weeks ago. Can't remember. But that money is held on behalf of that relationship.
I guess I was just confused. I think in note 2, because it talked about fund accounting, and it said, I think it said something to the effect that at the end of the operation that monies would be given to the U of A. And so I was just surprised. So payments are made annually to the U of A? Is that how that?
There's an agreed payment made annually out of that RADF fund, which we hold kind of in partnership with the University of Alberta.
Okay.
I can just hop in and kind of explain the technical side of that. There is a balance, and the calculation of that payment is based on the investment fund being in excess of that balance. any excess is then split based on percentages between the University of Alberta, the RADIF group, and also 4-H Alberta.
Okay, yeah, the way I had read it, I understood that payments wouldn't be made until the end of the fund or something, so just a little bit of clarification on that. The 4-H center, it looks like it's operating at a loss, if I'm not correct. I guess, are we going to continue to maintain the operation of the 4-H center?
I mean, outside of programming, that was the area that was hit the hardest as far as COVID, without having any type of external, very few, I would say, external bookings. Those external bookings do bolster that bottom line of the 4-H center. I mean, you can imagine we have all of these fixed costs for the center.
Right.
And those don't change year to year. So we really do need some of those external bookings. And hopefully that comes more in line in 2022.
Out of respect for the time that we've got to get through some other items here, there was one other question on the floor in person here. Marie, you had a question?
No, I didn't have a question. I was just going to add to the RADF. I was German.
Oh, you were? Oh.
All that started when you basically become existed because there's 100 million given to restricting and selected in the province.
Just speak a little louder.
Well, there was 13 of us collected in the province and we were given a blank sheet of paper and told to give out 100 million. And our investments were so good, we gave out 100 million and had this money left over, and this program was set up from it. And whenever the partners don't want it anymore, what's left over will be divided between university and 4-H. 4-H still gets the share. 4-H, I think, is supposed to get the bigger share.
Yeah.
If I remember right.
I believe so, yeah. It's
And you
excellent.
got all this. I mean, I was a 4-H person seeing on this, and you guys ended up with everything.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's a great legacy, Marie. Thank you. Thank you for that. So I think and again, out of the respect of time and the amount we have to cover here, we will have a Q&A after the AGM for voting members as well. So if we need to cover a few things we didn't quite get, I think that maybe has got it fairly covered for us for now. And after the meeting, in the days ahead, we can certainly cover some questions as well. So in that respect, then I think we need to move to the next part, which is, if I can ask you, Saida, to make a motion on the audited financial statements.
Sure. So I move to accept the audited financial statements for H Alberta for 2021 as presented by Candace McKay.
All right, can I have someone second that motion?
Nora second.
Nora Polovich seconds the motion. Okay, so the voting link will now be sent to you on that motion. So, is it sent?
Yep.
Okay, the link is there. Okay, please vote now. In favor or opposed? Marie, you can give that a try. Okay, I think we'll call voting closed on that now. Mary, did you get to work?
She just got it.
Oh, you just got it. Okay, voting isn't closed down. I'll let you vote. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, voting's closed. So,
Close the voting.
yeah.
You better do the music.
We need the elevator music or something. We have a member here who could lead us in some kind of a 4-H camp something.
Break up that shoulder shimmy.
I'm retired. Just waiting for the results. Okay, the votes are in, the motion is carried, thank you. So I'd like to advise also that a copy of the approved 2021 audited financial statements will appear on the 4-H website very soon. Okay, so the next item on the agenda was the ATB investment report, but Candace already did provide the information for that. So we will move on to 8.3 on the agenda, which is the appointment of the auditor for this coming fiscal year. So looking ahead to preparing the 2022 auditor's report, could I please ask you, Sayeda, to make a motion to appoint the auditor?
Sure. On behalf of the 4-H Alberta Board of Directors, I move that 4-H Alberta appoints Meyer George Penny as the organization's auditor for 2022.
All right, can I have a seconder for that motion? Andrea Hansen seconds that motion. All right, voting link
Check your email.
sent. Check your emails for the voting link on that
Go
motion.
back to your main screen.
I might
It
not.
should come in a minute, hasn't come.
It may not come through that way.
So do you want me to?
The Jeopardy.
Jeopardy, there we are.
You can sing it. Leanne, you can lead that.
I sing solo.
Well, that's okay.
So you can't
The
hear
floor is
yours.
yours. Votes are coming through. Okay. Just got the email? Oh, okay, so it's
Yeah.
different speeds for everybody. Okay.
We might not get through this one.
Okay, so I think we can call voting closed now. So just wait for the results. Technology is great when it works instantaneously. And when it doesn't, you think it should. Except when you're sending a text that you sent to the wrong person, and then it goes right away. That's always a
They
challenge.
spelt everything wrong.
Okay, the motion is carried, thank you. So now on to the next item on the agenda, which is the election of the board of directors vacancies. So I'd like to turn the proceedings over to Nora Polovich, the chair of our governance and nominating committee, for her report, and then the recommended slate of nominees. Nora?
Andy, can I ask a question? Is it a possibility to go with number 10 first?
No, we're gonna follow the agenda as approved, but I think we're gonna follow it that way, okay?
Well, I think number 10 is more important than the thing, because I think some of the bylaws could affect the way the directors are going to be nominated.
I think that it's important that we proceed with it the way we approved the agenda. I think that would have been something to mention when we were passing the agenda. So I think we'll just proceed with that. Okay.
Thanks, Andy. I just wish to thank the directors that served on the committee with me, who were Kathleen Linder, Scott Bodie, Saida Kurum, Tim Church, and Andy Pittman. Thank you all for all your commitment to this committee, and also to Kurt Simone for all your assistance and support. Thank you very much. The goals of this committee were to have a 4-H Alberta Board of Directors that reflects a broad representation of key stakeholders, including individual community members and stakeholder organizations, to attract and retain a leadership group committed to lead this youth development organization in the modern world, to recruit board members according to specific expertise, resources, and skills that contribute to the long-term strategies and ongoing operations of 4-H Alberta, to use a skills matrix to review the needs and capabilities of 4-H Alberta Board of Directors, and to ensure grassroots and youth representation. This slide. And this was the skills matrix that was developed to attract and recruit board members. And I'll go through the application and nomination process, but first I would like to thank all of those that submitted applications. We had highly qualified applicants for all of the positions. And I also wish to thank the board of directors that did the interviews for all of their time, knowledge, and expertise in conducting the interviews. 7 applications were received for the 5 director positions. It was a transparent but confidential process. As I mentioned, the interviews were conducted by an interview panel of at least 3 4-H Alberta Board of Directors. All applicants were vetted and qualified by the interview committee. Applicants for the area directors were qualified by the committee, and the candidate names and resumes were shared with regional council executives for their vote. And then regional council submitted the successful candidate name to our committee. Applicants for the diversity director were vetted and interviewed, and the interview committee then made their recommendation to the committee based on the interviews and the skills matrix. Reference checks were completed, and the final slate of nominees were presented to the 4-H Alberta Board for approval on May 2nd of 2022. And in your board package, you had bios and pictures of the nominees. Nominee for Diversity Director is Simone Demers Collins, and Simone, along with her many qualifications and achievements, has a strong background in communications and governance. Yes. Amanda Hardman is a nominee for the Youth Representative, and many of you may have crossed paths with Amanda as she is a 2019 Premier Award winner, and she has the distinct honor of being the longest serving Premier Award winner thanks to COVID. Kathleen Linder is a nominee for Area Director for the Northwest, and which she has filled for this past year. Nominee for East West Central is Charlene Preston, who is from the Hanna area and a long line of 4-H family members. Janice Wursta is a nominee for Area Director for the Northeast region, and she served in this capacity for the last year. On behalf of the 4-H Alberta Governance and Nominating Committee, I am pleased to make a motion to approve this slate of nominees at today's AGM, June 11th, 2022.
All right, moved by Nora, seconder. Andrea Hansen is the seconder for that motion. Okay, so in this process, I'll confirm that your vote will be in favor of or opposed to the entire slate of nominees.
Is there any discussion on this? Because I have some questions about how the nominations selected.
Well, we do have, that question was submitted in the last few days about asking that, and we will speak to that in the Q&A for sure afterwards. So, okay, so what would be your, I'll give you one question, what would that be?
How was the youth ambassador selected, and did the youth actually vote for the ambassador?
It was, we asked for applications, and our youth director was part of the interview committee. So that was our youth, already a youth representative as part of that.
But did the youth actually vote for their representative?
Our youth representative said this is the recommendation to say.
So one vote only?
Well, he represents the youth in the province. So I think that the quality of the nominee, I think, is clear. And I trust also that the interview panel that says that they feel strongly that that's the candidate.
But if I'm not mistaken, last year the youth voted. Every ambassador had an individual vote to vote for Jameson. Is it Jameson?
Yep. Evan, it is, yes.
Evan, sorry.
Yeah, for the interim board, that's how it would.
Yeah.
So why did it change?
The board felt that to provide an opportunity to more than just the ambassadors, we thought that would be an important thing. And that's why we also felt that we would have Evan as part of the interview panel. Yeah.
May I interject for just one moment, please?
Yes.
If we could just have this discussion off, there is opportunity for this to look for in future years and how this is going. Just because the interim board did it one direction doesn't mean this board did it the other. And we'll take those suggestions with the board and like to hear your feedback. Just at this time, this is the nominees that
Yes,
are
yes.
great candidates that are presented for the slate. And I feel that we should carry forward with that.
Okay, that's what we will do. So that at this time, we will call for the vote of the slate of nominees. So each voting member has one vote for or against the slate. Any ballot not cast will be counted as void. So Nora as governance chair and Evan as who has done his term as a board member will act as scrutineers and will review and confirm the ballots cast for election. Following the determination of the results, Nora as the chair of the governance and nominating committee will announce the results of the election at the meeting, and results will be posted on the 4H Alberta website as well. There won't be any appeal or recount available following the announcement of the election results. Voting is now open, so please cast your ballots. You should, for sure. You should for sure have one.
Refresh. We have to go out of your screen. Do you have a refresh?
It should arrive for you.
Let's delete that one so you don't get confused. Now it's refreshing.
So hopefully everybody's received their ballots by now. Yes, she could go. Right, for that, sure. Okay, so we have one oral vote. So does it look like everybody's received? Everybody here has received theirs? Okay.
Has everybody online received your email votes?
Okay, so I think we'll call the voting closed on that then. And we'll wait for the results. Yeah. So we can announce that.
Yeah.
Right here.
Motion passed.
Motion carried.
Motion carried, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you to Nora and Evan for that. And congratulations to the successful candidates as well. In a moment, I'll introduce them, but at first, could I please ask Kathleen Linder to make a motion to destroy the electronic ballots?
I move that the electronic ballots for the 2022 election of directors be destroyed.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a seconder for that motion? Saida Karam seconds that motion. So we'll put that in. We'll put that into the vote. We'll open the votes for that now and send the link. So once you get your link, please vote.
Oh, shoot.
So much
You're
work.
too busy doing tutorials to. Okay.
No, this one is slow.
Refreshing, everybody.
I did.
Yes. Yeah, passed. Just voting? You're just voting now, because they don't come to you. Once it's passed, yeah, we're still voting, so.
Still
Okay,
voting.
so, yeah, well, I guess everybody would have received it by now, so we'll close the
No.
voting on that. Marie? The old-fashioned way. Quicker. Yes. Quicker, for sure. Okay, that motion is approved, so you can please destroy those ballots.
Didn't get it yet.
So that motion is carried. So at this time, please join me in welcoming our new 4-H Alberta Board of Directors. Returning area directors Janice Wersta for Northeast area and Kathleen Linder for Northwest area. New area director for East and West Central regions, Charlene Preston. New diversity director, Simone Demers Collins. And new youth director, Amanda Hartman. Congratulations and welcome. Happy. Alrighty.
So which diversity
Yes,
board member is leaving that you're replacing?
Kathy Price.
Okay,
Yes.
gotcha.
Kathy Price.
Thank you.
You bet. Absolutely. Good question. So now on to the next item on the agenda. And again, we're running a little bit late for time, so we'll have to keep it moving here. So the 4-H Alberta bylaws amendments. Our next order of business, the approval of amendments to our 4-H Alberta bylaws, as was distributed to the voting members in your information packages. Plenty of work went into preparing the initial bylaws to ensure that there was proper governance within 4-H Alberta, and to also ensure that we reflected the values of the organization and our grassroots. Legal counsel was sought on these bylaws also. In review of the bylaws, it became apparent that a few amendments were in order. I will turn it over to Nora Polovich as our governance chair to explain further. Nora?
Okay, thank you, Andy. As Andy mentioned, this is all included in your package, and including a letter just to explain why we are proposing these amendments. I'll quickly summarize them. The first amendment is to delete anything about having a specific alumnus director, because Article 6.09 states at least 3 members of the board should be alumnus. We don't need a specific alumnus director. Number 2, removing a Government of Alberta representative on a governance and nominating committee. Number 3, removal of timelines in relation to the application, nomination, and interview process and any references to the interim board. Number 4, attendance by the secretary of all meetings. And number 5, the treasurer only has a right to vote if is a member of the board. So the letter kind of explained and highlighted what amendments we're proposing, and then the proposed amendments were in the, what do you call it, black line or red line?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, and we hadn't received anything specific on feedback regarding these amendments, so.
Do you have just one question? Is that possible?
Yeah, well, how about we'll make the motion and the seconder, and then I'll open it for that, okay? So at this time, Nora, could you make a motion on these amendments?
I move that we approve the amended 4-H Alberta bylaws as presented.
Okay, thank you, Nora. If Scott Bodie is on the line, could I have Scott Bodie please second that motion? If you're there, is he there? Oh, he's not on there? Okay, that's fine. So can I have a second for that motion?
Chris Patton.
Okay, Chris? Okay, Chris, perfect. Okay, so now your question that you had regarding this?
I just have a question with the removal of the timeline for respect that if the timeline's removed, how are we guaranteeing each year that this is being done for regions to have their proper votes and information to them before this meeting happens? Without a timeline in those bylaws, then sometimes these regional meetings are done and special meetings are having to be called and things are missed, or applications are received too late, or no one knows when to expect the information to go out as to when applications are even open.
You bet. No, fair question. I can take
Go ahead.
a stab at that. And I think that, for example, Northwest, and I'm thinking maybe that's where the question is coming from, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes.
So your meeting was a little bit earlier, and other meetings are different timelines. I think that certainly as, for example, these regional chair meetings and knowing the schedules and the community engagement committee, we've talked about that at that level, really knowing the schedules and knowing the timelines for everybody and the elections that come up that are coming for your areas. I think that we recognize that there are improvements we needed to make in this process. I think we clearly talked about that in ways that we can be more efficient and certainly make improvements. Without question, there were challenges and we're working through them. We've got a lot of recommendations bringing forward to the committee to put in place to make sure of that. And one of those is working with the Community Engagement Committee to ensure that we know those timelines so that we're not going to get behind. And we're going to start the process way earlier this year as well. So there are a number of things that we had hard lessons on this year. We want to make sure that we get right. And so we commit to making sure that we're going to get way further ahead of this, starting in the fall with where the vacancies are going to be. We're going to start making notification that comes out in the fall. So if that helps.
Many of the regions do up their program plan and submit all their dates on the website. So
right.
The dates should be all there if the regions are doing it.
Sure. Okay, there you go. So I think that that's a great point. I think we'll get that coordination much better this coming year. We recognize that we can make improvements there, and we're definitely committed to doing that. Again, we have a number of those recommendations already for the governance committee to review. So, Nora, is that?
Yeah, we just found the February 28th deadline was unrealistic.
Right, it really was, and that was the initial one that was set out last year, but it wasn't for the interim board. So then this is the first year we tried to implement that, and it just became a challenge with a bunch of other things we were doing. But we're implementing board work plans as well now that we didn't have last year. So we're going to ensure that we're ahead of the game on this, for sure. So.
Two things.
Chris, you have a question?
Yeah, I got two things. Procedure on this, each amendment should be its own motion going forward, because each thing is different in each subsection for procedure wise.
Okay, well, we can make that recommendation for next time, absolutely, yeah.
Second thing is we as the South, we've been asking forever about having board of directors split again. Just the South alone is over 40% of the kids represented in 4-H Alberta. The South and Calgary, sorry. East and West Central, we make up at almost 70% of the membership of this board. 70% of the kids in this Alberta program is only represented by 2 board of directors. The equal representation between board of directors to kids is uneven on this board. We've asked for it for a while to be split. We want our area directors for East and West Central to be split, and Calgary and South to be split. It's not equal representation on this board.
Okay, so what I'll say to that is, I think that we now have the ability, we're going to meet in November as regions and regional executives. I think we work towards that discussion then. We're getting governance training this afternoon. We'll probably have governance training in November as well. We start understanding the roles of area directors, the roles of how this governance works, understanding those, because those are impactful decisions in all directions, right? So I think that we need to have a thorough discussion of that, and I would commit to us by the November thing, let's aim to work towards that, and let's really work that out, and let's have that thorough discussion. I would commit to that right now, to do that in November. And I think that provides the ample time to understand all the ramifications of it, because there are ramifications in different directions for that. So I think that would be the right way to proceed with that.
Well, it feels really late because we've been asking this prior to the AGM to have these kind of discussions, so this could be on this agenda to be amended for this. Right. Go around, and it feels the ball's been dropped.
Change the amendment of your bylaws, because you have a space in there, so the discussion and the open opportunity for those discussions to carry forward.
Yep. We will commit to doing that, and I think we can have discussions working towards that, but at that time, we'll cover it thoroughly, and we'll have all the regions there. We'll commit to that, okay? Okay, perfect. So on that, so we have a motion on the floor. And so, because again, for the respective time, we will now call for a vote on that motion for the 4-H Alberta bylaws amendments. So please Hopefully, once you get your voting license, please vote. Okay. Let's see what Maria's got. Everybody must have it.
Marie, you got this one.
Okay, so we can close it. You just tell them to close it. Voting is closed. Sorry, getting ahead of it there. Yes. Okay, that motion is carried, and the amended 4H Alberta bylaws are approved and adopted. Thank you. Okay, so next item, again, thanks to the recognition and thanks to retiring directors. I think it's important for us to pause and thank those who have worked very hard and put in a great deal of volunteer time as 4H board members in helping us through various challenges and successes through the past year. First, a special thank you to the government of Alberta, who continues to believe in 4H and who provides an annual $1 million grant over 10 years. We greatly appreciate your continued commitment to 4H Alberta. That grant money represents our hard-earned dollars being returned to us in support of the youth of our province. We really appreciate that. Now on to our exiting directors. Evan Jameson, he represented the 4H members at our table on the first 4H Alberta board as our youth director, but also served time on the interim board. Evan was chair of our Programs and Growth Committee, where he was able to share his member-related views on 4H Alberta programming. He consistently provided excellent insight from the perspective of a 4H member, and always ensured and was a constant reminder to us that the member perspective should always be a prime focus in our discussions. Thank you, Evan. Kathy Price was a diversity director on our board and was also on the interim board going right back to March of 2020. Kathy was unable to join us today, unfortunately, but she provided great insight to our board. She was a key figure in the creation of our first strategic plan, and she was, and as the interim board People and Resources Committee chair, she was instrumental in the processes used for hiring the 4H Alberta staff group. Kathy is an energetic and passionate 4H volunteer, and she routinely brought that to the board table. We thank her for her time with the 4H Alberta board. Thank you very much, Kathy. I also want to mention Tim Church. He was elected onto the first 4H Alberta board in late May of last year, but stepped away from the board in March. During his time on the board, Tim was the scholarship committee chair and spent significant time on the regional bylaws discussions. Tim's long and storied history with 4H in this province was a huge asset when discussing many items. Tim was also instrumental in forging the new structure of 4H in the province. We greatly appreciate and thank Tim for his time with the 4H Alberta board. So looking ahead to 2022, 2023, yes. No, I think it's good. Looking ahead to 22, 23, while working on a wide range of activities over the past year, we strive to meet the challenge of maintaining our commitment to transparency. Today is an example of that, as well as to good governance. We are committed to continue building trust with our youth, our programming, and our community. By sharing with you today, as well as at regional meetings throughout the year, you will continue to learn about the activities of the board and organization. That means not only our accomplishments, but also our challenges and what we did in response to them. The 4H Alberta board elected last year had a majority of its members not having served on the previous interim board, which is a larger than normal change due to the fact that this was the first ever elected board. This posed a challenge for the group, as it required an orientation as well as new members committing to a variety of large tasks right off the bat. As everyone knows, the 4-H motto is learn to do by doing. Our board of volunteers can certainly attest to that, as we were learning as we were doing how best to function and perform our tasks properly and to be accountable to the grassroots as well. As we move forward, we also continue to strive to determine how best to support our youth and the 4-H volunteers that we so appreciate. We learned a great deal over the past year, and we know that there are areas that we want to ensure we improve in. Some of the things we plan to carry out in the next year are: we will continue developing good governance practices for the 4-H Alberta Board through development of further necessary guiding governance principles and internal assessments, as well as in-depth governance training. We met last month with all regional council chairs and have committed to meet quarterly with this group on an ongoing basis to ensure that your concerns are being brought forward in a timely manner and in a positive and constructive forum. We have also committed to hosting an in-person gathering of regional executives for learning and sharing, and this will likely happen in November of this year. We want to explore opportunities to have roundtable discussions with the 4-H community throughout the province over the next 12 months. We want to make sure the community is being heard, as we want to work to create as much transparency and trust as possible, 2 elements critical to any organization. We want to take advantage of in-person opportunities as much as possible also to meet with those amazing 4-H members, as well as talking to and especially listening to the volunteers who are such an important part of the development of our youth in 4-H in Alberta. Through these areas, we plan to continue our growth and development as a board in representing the grassroots of this province. Now, in respect of the time, it's 2:30 and we had intended to stop a half an hour ago. We're still gonna have a Q&A, but I think we'll conclude the AGM and then we'll keep the voting members on for a short, probably 15-minute Q&A because we're gonna have our governance training at 3 o'clock. So we're gonna have to have a fairly short one. I think we have covered some topics, but I think that we'll do that. So I think we're gonna have to move to the adjournment. But before I call a motion to adjourn, I wanna thank you again for attending today and for sharing your Saturday afternoon with us. It continues to be exciting times for 4-H Alberta as we grow and evolve in order to support where needed and move this organization forward. Thank you to the staff who work so hard every day for this great program and organization. And thank you to all the 4-H volunteers who are the backbone of this organization. Your time and care are what makes 4-H Alberta a truly special place to develop the young leaders of tomorrow. So can I ask Andrea Hansen for a motion to adjourn the AG?
I move to adjourn the 4-H Alberta AGM for 2022.
Okay, seconder?
Second.
Yeah,
Evan. Okay, Evan seconds. Okay, so we will put the voting in place now for that. Voting should be open soon. It is. It is. It's getting faster at the end.
It is.
Voting can be closed now. Oh, sorry, Marianne, did I go? You can just say yay.
I still haven't got motion 9.3 yet.
Oh.
Through yet.
Oh, well, you can just.
It never
you can
came.
wave. You can wave to me.
It's gotta go all the way to Fort McLeod back. You're a little emotional. But what else?
The squirrels in the cages are getting tired. Going over that.
The hamster's dead.
Okay, that motion is carried. So we will. The meeting is officially adjourned at 2:31. So we're going to stop the live feed now, but we'd like to thank everyone from the larger 4-H community who joined us this afternoon. We hope you found the information we provided to be of value to you. Thanks and have a great rest of your afternoon.